Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria DeVette. If you are new, today we're going to be doing a wear test of the new Kat Von D Vegan Beauty Good Apple Skin Perfecting Foundation Balm. I have been hearing so many mixed reviews on this. I was able to pick it up pretty much as soon as they released it, but I have not done a wear test with it yet. I know a lot of shades are already sold out. I picked up one that was just a little too dark, but it should be a good match. I kind of went off the pictures that they give of models wearing the foundation and kind of go from there, as well as looking at the description. For instance, this is the shade Tan 063 and it is for medium to tan skin with warm undertones. I usually try to go with golden or yellow undertones, but again, so many shades were sold out, so I kind of just picked the closest one. So this is what it looks like in the compact. So here I'm going to show you the swatch of this shade next to other foundation shades that are very close to a perfect match for my skin tone, so you can kind of get a comparison, maybe try to find your shade if you are close to my skin tone. The foundation does retail for $38. If you're looking into this foundation, you probably already have heard the claims, but just a little recap. The Good Apple Foundation Balm gives you a fast, lightweight, full coverage with a fresh matte finish. Fresh matte finish, yep, not flat, not dewy, just right. Skin that looks like skin. Buildable full coverage that lasts all day and feels like you're not even wearing foundation. Quickly covers blemishes and discoloration for an instant confidence boost. Flashback free, non-cakey, and it'll last all day. It does say that it is best for balanced to dry skin, but oily folks can use it too. I think a lot of the negative reviews that I've been seeing have been from people with oily skin, so that may be something to keep in mind. My skin is currently normal to dry. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly do my eyeshadow and then we'll get started applying the foundation. Okay, so like I mentioned, my face is right now normal to dry. It is the winter months-ish, so my face is still pretty dry. So I've already moisturized and put on SPF. I will link everything that I use in the description. So my face is moisturized right now. I've given some time for the SPF to absorb. So on one side of my face, I am going to use a primer. The other side will be with no primer. I will also set the side that I'm using the primer on with a setting spray. I will be setting my face very lightly with the translucent setting powder from Laura Mercier. I found that that one is very light and still gives a really good idea of how the foundation wears. So I'm gonna go ahead and prime my right side of my face. And I am using the NYX Marshmallow Primer. I did pick up the full version, but I'm still kind of testing it out. So far, I do like it with my other foundations. Okay, on the website it does say you can use a sponge or a dense brush. I think for the side with nothing on, I'm probably going to use a sponge, and then this side with the primer and setting spray, I am going to use a brush. So I'm starting off with the brush side. I'm using my Marc Jacobs foundation brush. I absolutely love this brush so much. I feel like it makes any foundation look so good. Just by swatching it, a lot comes off just by tapping into it very lightly. So I'm just barely pushing my brush into it. That actually goes on really heavy, and you can see it is a little bit darker, like I said, but I think it'll kind of go with the rest of my body. It's like a new layer of skin. And you can see I do have some acne scars. I get dark spots whenever I get acne, so that's kind of what I'm looking to cover up right now. You can still kind of see this one, but that's just one layer, and I started on my cheeks, so I feel like if I picked up a little bit more, I could probably get a full coverage covering those dark spots. So far it looks really good. I'm gonna pick up a little bit more, just a little bit. I just tapped once into it. Gone. That one is pretty much gone. That one's a really dark spot, so I feel like I might need to spot conceal with that one with the foundation, which it does say that you can do. So it's looking really good so far. So this is the side with the brush, and I'm gonna see, you can still kind of see that dark spot, so I'm gonna take some on my finger And that really covered that up. This is exciting. It feels really good and it doesn't feel cakey at all. It feels really light on my skin. It's a little intimidating because it goes on really thick, but once you blend it out, it feels really lightweight. And you can see it did a really good job covering most of my dark circles underneath my eye. Okay, so now I'm gonna use a sponge. This is the e.l.f. Total Face Sponge, and it isn't super damp, but it isn't super dry either. It's kind of in the middle between damp and dry. So it's sort of damp. So again, just picking up a little bit more on the sponge. And it pretty much covered those dark spots that I have here. You can still kind of see this one. I don't know if I like the application more with the sponge or a brush. I feel like it looks pretty smooth on both sides. I feel like at this point it would just be a matter of preference. I think I like the application process of a brush a little bit more, but the sponge worked beautifully. Okay, I'm gonna take one more dab of some foundation, try to get this dark spot here. And it totally just disappeared. Okay, now I feel like it might have gone a little bit smoother with the sponge. I don't know, it's really hard to tell, but overall I think they look similar. And keeping in mind the sponge side doesn't have any primer either. So this is what it looks like without anything else, no concealer, nothing. I think it looks really good. I have not set it yet. I feel like it looks like my skin. It looks like my skin, but perfected. Okay, so now I am going to finish the rest of my face. I'm gonna try to keep the rest of the stuff pretty light so you can really see the foundation on its own mostly. For concealer, I'm using the new Shape Tape Ultra Creamy Concealer, and this is in the shade Medium Sand. Again, trying to keep it really light. So that was a little bit of concealer. Now I am lightly setting it with the Laura Mercier setting powder. Just taking a very light layer on a brush. So now for bronzer, I am using the Bronzed in Paradise palette from Ace Beauty. For blush, I'm using the Bare Minerals Gen Nude Powder Blush in Bellini Brunch. And for highlight, I'm going to be using the ColourPop Super Shock Cheek in Parasol. I'm just adding a tiny bit more powder underneath my eye because I'm fairly new to this ultra creamy Tarte concealer, and because the foundation is also so creamy, I was noticing some creasing right away. So I think the first thing we've learned with this foundation is don't use a moisturizing or creamy concealer. Because I haven't noticed that much creasing with that concealer with my other foundations, so I think it might just be this one because it's so creamy and I hadn't set it that much. So I just added a little bit more powder and it's looking pretty good. So it's just something to note for now. Okay, now I did say I was going to set this side of my face, and I am using the Morphe Continuous Setting Spray. Okay, so this is a fresh face using the foundation. This side does have the primer and setting spray. Both sides have a light layer of setting powder, but this one only has the setting powder. So first impressions, I think it looks amazing. So we're gonna see how it wears. I'm going to be staying home. Right now it is about 3:30 p.m. I'm mostly just going to be working on editing a video and maybe doing some housework like cleaning and stuff. So nothing too crazy. I'm not gonna be wearing a mask today, just based off of how I have it right now. Touching my face, I do pick up a little bit on my fingers, and I feel like wearing a mask right now without setting it how I normally would not go well. So we're gonna avoid wearing a mask today. But first impressions are really good. I feel like the color was a pretty good match. I actually kind of like that it was a little bit darker than my face because it helped match to my body a little bit better, I think. So it is about 3:30 p.m. I will be back at 5:30 for a 2-hour check-in. Okay, so it is about 6:30 now. I realized I was actually closer to 4 when I finished applying my foundation, so I waited a little bit longer. So this is what it's looking like. and I will go ahead and show you what it looks like in daylight as well. Okay, so this is what it's looking like in natural lighting. I think it looks really good. I'm not really seeing a difference between the primed and setting spray side versus the nothing side. I feel like the concealer looks a little bit worse on this side though, so that may be a factor. I'm getting just a tiny bit shiny around my nose, but that is just kind of something that happens. There is a tiny bit in my smile lines, but I know that it could be so much worse. So to me, this actually looks really good. It does still feel like when I touch it, I get a little bit on my fingers, but it feels a little bit less now that it has had time to settle onto my face. So yeah, so far so good. I'm gonna go ahead and check in around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then again, probably at midnight to see if it's still holding up this well. Okay, so it is 9:41. So I've had the foundation on for about 5 hours now. Overall, I feel like it's looking pretty good. I think at this point, I would normally do a touch-up, probably go in with some setting powder or even just go over it with my sponge. I'm starting to get a little bit shiny around my nose and chin and mouth area. My cheeks though are looking pretty good. I don't see any breaking in the foundation. I can see it's kind of starting to around my nose. My smile lines are doing pretty good. I haven't touched my face at all except to just touch up my lips. We're gonna ignore the concealer because it's looking really bad. I think so far the biggest takeaway from this wear test is to not use a hydrating or creamy concealer with this foundation. Again, not really seeing a difference in the side that I used a primer and the setting spray. It looks a little bit fresher just on the concealer, I would say, but both cheeks look pretty similar. It's looking pretty good. I will do one final check-in. Okay, so this is the final check-in. It is 12:33. So now it is definitely starting to break apart, especially around my upper lip and nose area. Mostly just where I get oily. My cheeks still look fairly good. I feel like I look a little bit more oily on this side where I have the primer and setting spray compared to the side with no primer. It's a little bit drier along this area right here. As far as how it feels a little bit heavy right now, mostly just where I got oily. I can feel the oil on my skin with the foundation, but everywhere else still feels really light. In between these last two check-ins, I did accidentally rub my jawline and did get quite a bit of foundation on my fingers. So I am curious to see how this would last and hold if I used more setting powder. I feel like just based off of the primer and the setting spray, it wouldn't make too much of a difference if I used it on both sides, but I feel like the setting powder would probably be the key to making this last longer. But honestly, it could look worse, but this is working with my type of skin, which is normal to dry with a little bit of oiliness in my T-zone. Final thoughts on the Good Apple Skin Perfecting Foundation Balm. Overall, I really liked it. I think it went on absolutely beautifully with either a brush or a sponge. I think it will take a little bit of experimenting with different concealers and primers to really get the most out of this foundation. But for what I used today or didn't use, I think it performed fairly well. I think it would take a really good setting powder or a good amount of setting powder to make this transfer proof. I'm definitely going to try it with a matte concealer based off of how the Ultra Creamy concealer performed from Tarte. I think that would probably be the best route. So I'm actually going to touch it up right now to see how well it does with a touch up. I think that is one of the most important things for me when it comes to foundation, because with most of my foundations, I find that I end up having a touch up at least once a day, especially if I'm going to be wearing it for longer than 8 hours. So how well it does and how easily it's able to be touched up is really important to me. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that process. So I'm just going to use a sponge and I'm going to go over the areas that I feel need to be touched up. So I just took a little bit on my sponge. I'm going to do this on both sides. I wouldn't really touch up with a brush just because I feel like it would move it around too much. And that's pretty much it. It looks pretty much like it did when I first applied it. So that is really nice. It does touch up really well. So overall, I think I really enjoyed using this, and I'm definitely going to be reaching for this a lot. And I am going to be experimenting with different setting powders and primers to really get the most out of it. Hopefully I can figure out a combination to wear with a mask. But otherwise, it looks really beautiful and it lasted a pretty long time, of course, with just some touch-ups. And if you have more oily skin compared to me, I think it might not be the best foundation for you. I feel like you would need to touch it up a lot more frequently than I would. So let me know what you guys think about this foundation. If you guys were able to pick it up before it all sold out. If you're planning on getting it when it is restocked, definitely let me know. If you are a little bit iffy on the shade choices and which one you should go with, I would say the pictures that they use of the models wearing the foundation is a really good gauge as to what your foundation color might be. That is what I did, and I think it was actually a really good choice. That is all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember that you are loved, you are seen, and you are beautiful. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.